It's like way too easy to blend in as a student here. I think since I basically live in hoodie jackets and have permanent under eye bags, I pretty much blend in with like the rest of the student body. Today I'm going to be talking about 5 books I read this month, and this video is going to be a little bit different because I decided that all the books I would read this month would be about different locations. So in the title, it would have to say a location like school, house, castle, etc. And since I'm in Barcelona, I would also visit the locations around the city. We're trying out something new, but what stays the same though is that I'm still doing giveaways for all these 5 books I've read, plus 5 brand new books from Book of the Month, which is the sponsor of today's video. They're a super popular and fast-growing online service for readers, so their mission is to promote new and emerging authors to help readers discover books that they love. So every month they go through hundreds of book titles and curate 5 to 7 books per month for you to choose from. It's totally risk-free, so you can skip any month, anytime, and you will not be charged. This month they decided to select 5 books for April. I've included them all here, but my personal pick would be Like a Sister. This is a thriller book about a reality star who was found dead, and her half-sister is the main character who goes on a search to find the truth because she suspects that there is some foul play here. I love reading about characters that are on reality TV or in the entertainment industry because I feel like there's going to be some juiciness that we're going to uncover in this murder mystery. Giveaway details will be in my description, but if you want the books guaranteed, you can get your first box for $9.99 if you live in the US. This is pretty much the best price that you can find for hardcover new fiction. Okay, so let's go to the first location for this video, and that is going to be House Apollo. This house is Casa Vicens, which was designed by a really famous architect named Gaudi. Gaudi's architecture is all over Barcelona. It's a huge tourist place, but Casa Vicens is the first house that he's designed. I feel like this book was so weird in a good way, and Casa Vicens really reflected that. So this was built between 1883 and 1885. It was supposed to be a summer house for the Vicens family. He incorporates so many natural elements into design, ranging from leaves to flowers, and again, I feel like this is so relevant to House Apollo because you can tell even just from the cover, there's some spooky shit going on with flowers in this book. House Apollo is a young adult standalone novel about 3 sisters who mysteriously disappeared when they were children. They were gone for a month. Nobody knew how it happened because it was like they just vanished. And then just as quickly as they vanished, one day they came back completely naked, shivering. They all had a half-moon scar at the base of their throats. And ever since they came back, you can tell that they've been different. So their hair has turned white. They have a lot of eerie things that happen wherever they follow, and they can seemingly control other people. Like for example, one of the sisters was getting bullied at school, and then they were able to make the bully stand up in front of the entire school and cut her hair while she was crying the entire time. So there's definitely some supernatural, weird, freaky shit going on. But the story begins when the oldest sister goes missing under suspicious circumstances. And this sister is someone who really stood out to me because she had grown up to become a very famous fashion designer. She started her own brand called House Apollo. So this is where I found out that this is not actually a house that we're following, but a fashion brand. But her fashion style is really cool because it incorporates a lot of natural elements, which is why I found Casa Vicens to be similar to that. And there are secret messages that she would stitch in between the seams of the clothes. There's this haunting beauty that is associated with these clothes and pretty much all the sisters, which is how she was also able to rise to fame. And there's this creepy thing that happens throughout the book where the characters begin to vomit flowers or they bleed flowers. So it's this cool combination of being both creepy and gory, but very feminine and beautiful and natural. So the rest of the book follows the 2 sisters trying to follow where the oldest sister disappeared to, which also involves figuring out what really happened to them when they were children. I really enjoyed this book. It took me only 2 days to read it because I found it so addicting to just fly through the story. It's almost like it was aesthetically pleasing in writing form, and I really dig that. There's so much strangeness, and the author writes horror and atmosphere so well, and it just feels so unique because she incorporated all these feminine qualities to it. It's not just blood and gore, but it's just like fucking flowers being vomited and you don't know why. Everything about it is just weird in an aesthetically pleasing way. Like the oldest sister is supposed to to be some ethereal beauty. She's really just a weird little fungus lady. You step into her apartment and it's just fucking weird mushrooms and crystals growing everywhere. I think a movie adaptation for this would actually be pretty good because it gives a lot of leeway for pretty aesthetics and fashion, but at the same time, all the sisters are white as hell, literally pale skin and ethereal beauty and everything. So Hollywood doesn't have to strain too hard for diversity. It's like the perfect match for them. I rated this book 4 stars, but I definitely can see this being like one of the top books I read this year just because I enjoyed it so much. So just take my ratings with a grain of salt. Basically, if you're one of those Tumblr girls that would reblog creepy occult shit for the aesthetic, you would probably like this book. After that, I read a romance book called Beach Read, which means that we are obviously going to the beach. For this, I visited Bogatel Beach, which apparently was created just in time for the 1992 Barcelona Olympic Games. But today it's just a pretty standard beach and hangout place. When I visited, there wasn't as many people because it was super windy and cold, but there were still so many dogs there running around. It was so freaking cute. So while I was walking around the beach trying to not get sand in my eyes from the gusts of wind that was blowing everywhere, I was admiring the dogs while enjoying my book. So despite this book being called Beach Read, I have found that they weren't really at the beach that often. I mean, the characters do live in a beachside town, and there is a scene where the main character goes to a beach and cries, which is a mood. But I don't know if I would call the title Beach Read, especially when you hear the plot. So basically, it's about 2 writers who both end up in a creative rut due to their own personal issues. So the main character is a romance writer who is struggling to write romance stories because she no longer believes in love. After her dad has died, she finds out that her dad had been cheating on her mom the entire time. The other main character is a guy who writes literary novels. Both these characters and the type of books that they write are polar opposites, but they end up being neighbors when she moves into her father's second house that he had been keeping with his mistress. And she's very annoyed that the other guy is now her neighbor because they actually used to know each other in college and she had always seen them as rivals. She never thought that he took her work seriously because it felt like he was mocking the romance genre and that he didn't think that it was serious literature. It was basically like every white girl from 2 years ago perceiving me on book Twitter. But unfortunately, I had no romance with any of those white girls, although that would have been juicy. Where's my enemies to lovers romance? How come when people hate me, they just hate me instead of secretly wanting to bang me? Anyway, the hook for this story is that since they are both dealing with writer's block, they decide to switch genres. So she's gonna try to write the next great American novel and he's gonna try to write a romance novel. They will help each other out writing their respective genres. So she takes him on field trips that are reminiscent of rom-com montages and he takes her to interviews with surviving members of a suicide cult because that was the original topic that he was gonna write about. So very different experiences to help them inform their books. But obviously along the way, they catch feelings for each other, or maybe they had feelings for each other all along. Last year, I read People We Meet on Vacation by the same author, and I loved that book. I gave it 5 stars. This one, unfortunately, I'm not feeling it as much. There isn't anything wrong with the book by any means. I think it's really just a personal preference, because what really grabbed me for the author's other book, there was so much pining, and you could tell they cared for each other so much throughout their friendship. This one, though, obviously they were attracted to each other, but it didn't hit the same way. I didn't really care for the romance itself. I ended up being more invested in how these writers would pull off writing different genres. What I will say about this author's approach to romance books that I think makes her unique compared to most of the romance genre, or at least books that I have read, is that I feel like a lot of times romance books are solely focused on the couple and the relationship, which is totally fine. But her approach to romance seems to be more about showing 2 individuals who are struggling with different things, and you see them come together and heal together and be in a relationship together. It feels much more focused on the individuals as you see their underlying problems, whereas that is usually like plot B of other romance books that I've read. So I appreciated the depth and the internal struggles that the characters were facing outside of the relationship. Like, how does a romance writer try to believe in romance again after dealing with the fact that her father is not who she thought he was? I think it's interesting to explore those things, but then whenever it came to the romance, I just didn't really feel anything for it. This one I would give 3 stars. After that, we're going back to school because the next book that I read is The School for Good Mothers. Obviously, there is no dystopian school that exists out there to train mothers to become their definition of a good caretaker. So the place that I visited instead was the University of Barcelona. What I spent the most time in was not really like the classrooms or inside the buildings, but actually the garden that's in the center of all of the buildings. They had their own botanical garden that was really nice. As someone who had all of her education in America, I definitely think that schools in Europe are much better. And what I found unique and temporarily distracted me from my mission that day was this area that was devoted to all these stray cats. They had all these little houses that were set up for stray cats, and they had these little bowls for them to eat from. And so these cats just hang out there, and I thought it was so cute because I hadn't seen many cats while I was living in Barcelona. It's like way too easy to blend in as a student here. I think since I basically live in hoodie jackets and have permanent under eye bags, I pretty much blend in with like the rest of the student body. My chaotic sleep schedule matches the feeling of finals week. The School for Good Mothers is one of my highly anticipated novels for the year. It follows a mother who makes a mistake of leaving her child at home for 2 hours. Her child is, I think, less than 1 year old. She left her kid at home because she needed to go to her workplace to send out an email or something like that. It was just supposed to be a very quick office errand. It wasn't supposed to take that long, but because she was so sleep deprived from not getting any sleep due to her baby crying all the time, and also from being so tired in general due to being a single mom thanks to her former husband cheating on her, and also some part of her wanted to have a fucking break because taking care of a kid 24/7 is exhausting. But she just lost track of time, and someone reported that there was a baby at home alone, and that's how she got into trouble. As a result, she gets sent to this government reform program that the United States is trying out. It's a year-long program that actually feels more like prison because all of these terrible mothers get sent there. They don't have any access to their phones or technology. They all have to wear uniforms, and they get heavily monitored the entire time that they're there. All the moms receive these animatronic dolls that are really lifelike and are supposed to act as their child for the entire time of the program to monitor whether they would be a good mom or not and whether they have improved. If they can pass the program, then they can get custody of their child. If they don't pass the program, then they can never see their child again. The test that they go through is extremely rigid. So they get monitored on stuff like how loving their hug is, how long do they embrace their kids for, what are their facial expressions and tone of voice whenever they talk to the doll. The school and the rules are very exaggerated to the point where it does seem kind of ridiculous, but I went along with it anyway because I know the point that I was trying to make. It really showed that motherhood is truly scrutinized to the point where it's almost like you're not even a human anymore. You are expected to be 100% perfect all the time because if you are not, then you're seen as a terrible human being. You're seen as abusive. You are overanalyzed based on any mistake or bad moments that you've had. So in order to avoid that, you literally have to give up everything and sacrifice so much for your child. As I kept on reading the book, I found a lot of it to be repetitive. Once she enters the school, a lot of the same events just happen over and over with the same test, a little bit of drama between the mothers, and then going through the same test over and over again. And you go through that for every single month that she's in the school. The repetition felt like it didn't really move the story any further. It kind of just felt like we were passing the time and trying to survive along with the mom, which maybe that's what the author is trying to do, but I don't know if that makes an interesting story. I wish there were more character developments or plot developments or twists. I thought that there was this interesting thread that could have been explored further that didn't. She is the daughter of immigrant parents, and it's mentioned that her upbringing wasn't as loving and affectionate as these schools require the mothers to do for their children. Her mom never kissed her or embraced her or said I love you or anything like that. So a lot of immigrant parenting styles can be seen as cold and unfeeling. And I think that's an interesting contrast to the way that the school requires their moms to be 100% devoted to their kids all the time and be affectionate. I would really like to explore this further because I think it's interesting to see how her upbringing has impacted her own experiences as a mother. So when she gets sent to the school, her child gets sent to the baby daddy, who is also living with the other woman that he had an affair with, who is also a white woman. So something that the main character is so afraid of throughout the story is her child growing up with not just one white parent, but two white parents, and possibly never knowing her Chinese side. There's this devastation that the main character feels about that. It would have been so interesting to explore this even further with the way that race can play into motherhood. And I feel like we only really gloss the surface of that. So all this time that we spent into the constant repetition of the tests throughout the months could have been spent on exploring these story threads even further and giving an even deeper layer of commentary about motherhood. But we didn't get that, so in the end, I rated this 3 stars. After that, we are gonna take a short trip to the convenience store because the next book that I read is a short little novella called Convenience Store Woman. There are so many convenience stores all around Barcelona, pretty much any block that I walk. There's not much I can say about the convenience stores in Barcelona. I also didn't get as much footage because obviously these stores are monitored through cameras and I didn't want to be seen as the creep that was for some reason filming these stores. I don't know what's worse, leaving this to the imagination of why I'm filming these stores or saying the actual truth, which is that I'm filming it for a video about books because I have a channel dedicated to talking about books. I could definitely say from reading this novella that I would want to visit any convenience store that this main character works in because she seems amazing at her job. She is so thoughtful about how every counter is displayed, how to make promotions widely available to her customers. She's like the best employee ever when it comes to convenience stores. And she loves her job too because she grew up not really understanding social interactions or what it means to be normal. And she likes how when you are a worker in a convenience store, there are these rules of how you interact with customers that are super clear. It's an easy way for her to copy the way that people dress, the mannerisms that people have, the way that people speak to each other. It's where she can finally blend in as a normal person. So she has really thrived in this environment. But because she has worked in the store for 18 years and she is now a 30-something-year-old woman, a lot of people get concerned whenever they find out that she's been working there for so long. People think that she needs to find a proper job or get married or have a family. Ultimately, this book takes a look at societal expectations of what an adult should be. Like a lot of people expect marriage to be the big thing in life that you eventually have to do, and when other people don't get married, that's really weird to them. And so there's this reflection on conformist society and how a lot of people just follow things because that's expected of them without really questioning whether they enjoy it or not. Even though I appreciate the themes of this story, I think because it was so simple, it didn't dive into it as deeper as I would have liked, which is fine. I don't think that the book was trying to be super deep or anything. It had a very simple message and theme, but due to simplicity, I don't think the book has stuck with me as much as other books would. So for that, I'm rating it 3 stars. And then the last place we're gonna visit is a castle, because the last book that I read is Lonely Castle in the Mirror. I visited Montjuic Castle. This is at the top of a summit of Montjuic Mountain, and it was originally a defensive site because it offers a 360 view of the territory. You could see pretty much everything. You can see the city, and it's also next to the ocean. So even though today it offers some pretty great views, back then it was used more as a fortress during the Reapers' War in 1640. Even though the castle I visited is more used as a military base, the book that I read is much more whimsical in comparison. person. The castle in this book is actually this whimsical place that 7 middle grade students find inside their mirrors. What these 7 students have in common is that they all don't go to school. They have avoided going to school for their own personal reasons. The main character that you follow has not gone to school because she has been bullied so much. So because all of them are afraid to go to school for their own various reasons, they've retreated in their own bedrooms, they've become kind of a hermit and they've been alone until one day their mirror starts to shine this light and they find out that it's this portal that goes into this other world where they find this castle, they meet each other, they meet this other girl that you see on this cover here who's wearing a wolf mask and she calls herself the Wolf Queen. The Wolf Queen tells them that there's a key hidden inside the castle and whoever finds the key can have their wish granted. This is essentially a story about mental health and how hard it is to be a kid, especially when you're dealing with family issues or bullying, but it also shows the importance of being there for one another as you see the friendships that these kids start to form. I personally wasn't really into the book for most of it, but the last 1/3 is where it really shone because that was pretty much the best part. The last 1/3 of the story is basically when you see all of the characters and storylines come together in a way that makes sense. It's like you got all these puzzle pieces and then they finally click together into place, and the way that the author did it was just really smart and creative and very satisfying. So even though the book didn't resonate with me as much, in terms of writing and craft, I really like the way that this author pieced together everything in the end because this is what I'm looking for when it comes to a satisfying ending. So in terms of enjoyment, I'm gonna rate this 3 stars, but I do think that if you are the type who likes to watch heartwarming anime, then I think you would like this book because it gave me similar vibes to that. All right, so those are all the books that I read for this month. Unsubscribe from my channel and goodbye.
Leaving all my worries, I prepare for something new. Whatever it was that held me back, I'm sure it wasn't true. Holding on too long and unresolved questions hold you down.